Hello, and welcome to Archive Dive. I'm Maria Lockwood, a reporter with the Superior Telegram. Each month, we dip into files on historic events, people, and places in Superior and Douglas County with local historians. Today, we'll search for retooled school buildings in Superior. Many former schools have found a new life after the final bell. Some are apartments, others are a church or a business center. We'll dive into ages, dates, and histories. When were they built? How long did they last? And what are they now? Helping us dive into the story today is local historian Teddy Moronic. Hi, Teddy.
Hi, Maria.
Thanks for joining us.
Oh, I'm happy to be here.
So there are a lot of old school buildings in Superior, and I thought it might be good to go neighborhood by neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk about both public and parochial schools, right? Because there were both the Catholic schools and the public schools. All right. So we're going to kick it off with Itasca.
Itasca was the place where the last wooden schoolhouse in Superior was standing. Yes, until 1940.
There was a wooden schoolhouse in Superior.
A wooden schoolhouse in Superior in 1940.
What school?
The Itasca. Well, it had originally been called the Andrew Webster School because I don't know how that ended up in Itasca since Mr. Webster ran the Webster Chair Factory in South Superior, but they named the school in Itasca after him. I believe when it started out, they weren't connected to the sewers in Superior, so they didn't have any indoor plumbing.
So they used an outhouse?
Outhouse, yes.
Oh.
And until they got connected to the sewers was about 10 years after it was built. But that building lasted until 1940 when they built the new Itasca School, which was a WPA project.
Okay.
And then they tore down the old building, but that was the last wooden structure.
Where was that one located in Itasca?
I think the old school was like 51st Avenue East and East 2nd Street.
Okay.
So, and the other school is right nearby. Now it's the Twin Ports Baptist Church.
Oh, that was the Itasca School.
Yeah, the new one, not the wooden one. Had indoor plumbing.
Okay, so that started as the Itasca School in the 1940s.
Yep.
And then when did that school close down and it become a church?
Twin Ports Baptist bought it in 1982.
82.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So, all right. Are there any others in Itasca we're missing?
Not Itasca. You very much have to pay attention to the boundary lines.
All right. So now we're moving to Eloise.
Yes. And Eloise had two schools. Saints Anthony and Margaret was its official name.
Oh.
And then, of course, they had Benjamin Franklin School, they're both still standing. Both, St. Anthony School and Franklin School are both still standing.
What are they?
Probably the only neighborhood that still has their original schools.
Really? When were the schools built then? Were they a little later on in?
Well, Franklin's the oldest school building in existence in Superior because it was opened in 1905.
Franklin, as in Franklin Courts Apartments?
Yes, 1905.
1905, wow.
And it was designed by your favorite architect and mine, Carl Worth. But then they had to add an addition because there were so many kids out there.
Okay.
And that happened, I think, around 1919. And one of my other favorite architects, Kenneth Crumpton, who designed the East End Library, and the grade school, St. Adalbert's, that I went to is also a Crumpton design.
So two great designers, a building that has stood the test of time.
Yes, I'm so glad that there's sort of a monument to these two architects. But I mean, it was a booming suburb, as they would call it in its day, because of the docks. There were lots of jobs out there, lots of immigrants. St. Anthony's was a Belgian church. I think they started out with 39 families and ended up with something like 275 Belgian families out there.
Wow.
And they really identified as a Belgian community because the priest that was sent there actually came from Belgium.
Okay.
And he was going to organize it into sort of a small Belgian community out there where all the families were going to live around the church and the school.
Right. And that's where the Belgian Club
Yes, the Belgian
from.
Club is the community organization. But they raised all the money.
For the school.
They came to Superior. There was no church for them. Some of these organizations or these churches came to Superior and they used an already standing church before they
Mhm.
built one for their parish. But they didn't have that. They met in the Woodman's Hall, which was an organizational hall out there in Eloise, until they built the first St. Anthony Church. And that one was designed by René Legay, who is really a famous, he is a
Okay.
famous architect in Superior.
Did they have the school at the church then, or was that
They built a school, but I think it burned down.
Oh,
But they raised the money then in 1927 to open the building that's now there as an apartment out in Eloise. And then they built a new church later on. I mean, they
made a lot of money.
they did, and they raised all this money, and they built a rectory for the priest,
Mhm.
and they built the school, and they built a new church in the 50s, and they still are a church.
And where is St. Andrews?
St. Anthony,
St. Anthony, sorry.
trying to think, is it 41st, 43rd Avenue East?
Is it a building that people go by, and what is
Well,
it
you
now?
can't see it from 2nd Street.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to get off the main drag.
And what is its purpose now? What is it used for?
Their school
The old school building,
is an apartment building.
an apartment building.
Yeah.
What apartments?
I don't know if they call them the St. Anthony.
Oh, they have, okay.
Yeah, the school was right across from the church. The church is still going. They still have a
Mhm.
congregation, but I think St. Anthony's closed in 1969. The school did.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was the big time in the 1960s was when a lot of the Catholic schools were closing
Okay.
because the population was declining in
Mhm.
Superior itself. And it was also when a lot of the public schools closed because they were consolidating and they were building new schools like Blaine.
Right.
That was
trying
built
to-
in the 50s, yeah,
Mhm.
and then Superior High School.
Oh, getting all the small schools
Yeah,
together so they don't
yeah,
pay as much
right,
for separate
yeah,
buildings.
Yeah, so
Okay.
a lot of neighborhoods lost. In East End, we had, when I was growing up, we had East High School, St. Adalbert, St. Francis, and Nelson Dewey.
Oh,
And there are no schools in East End anymore.
correct.
Yeah.
And that actually is our next neighborhood. Are we done with Eloise?
Yeah, Franklin School was, and it was a pretty big school. And when it closed down, there was a little controversy in the neighborhood because
Uh-oh.
someone had purchased it, the building, a local doctor, and had given the city or the school district the idea that within a certain amount of time, it was going to be developed into a senior daycare center.
Oh,
And I think there were a couple years after the purchase, it was written into the agreement, I think by 1990, that this had to be an ongoing operation, but it wasn't. So they thought about tearing it down, and then they decided to seek developers, and they turned it into an apartment building. But the neighborhood wasn't happy about that
really?
because they didn't know what it was going to be, what it was going to look like, what kind of apartments they were going to be.
Mhm.
They were okay with the senior daycare, but they weren't too sure about the apartment thing. But it finally went through, and I think it's a very nice addition to the neighborhood.
It stood the test of time.
I'm
for
glad
sure.
to see it,
Mhm.
rather than not be there.
Right? Housing is at a premium
Yes.
right now. So it's nice.
And I've looked
to
at
have
the pictures online, and they look like nice apartments.
Okay. Very cool. All right. Moving into town, we come to the East End.
Right.
Which
right.
had how many schools?
We had 4 schools. I had 4 schools within, 5 blocks of my house.
Wow.
Everybody walked to school because
Mhm.
I went to East Junior High, and that's gone now.
Right.
But Nelson Dewey and St. Francis, the buildings are still standing.
Okay.
And St. Francis had the distinction of being the oldest Catholic school in Superior. It was organized in 1883.
Oh, wow.
It was a huge school because there was no place else if you were Catholic in Superior that you were going to be able to send your kids because a lot of the other schools hadn't been built yet.
Okay.
And in fact, at one time they went from kindergarten through 12th grade, educating kids there.
Wow.
But then St. Adalbert's opened up, so their population dropped a bit. And Nelson Dewey, of course, had the old school, which was built in 1890 or something like that.
Mhm.
And then they built a new school in 1930,
Right.
which is still standing, which is apartments,
Correct.
as is St. Francis.
St. Francis's apartments also.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not their original school. Their school building and the house that they had for the nuns
Mhm.
were both built in 1930 and designed by John Bach, who's another pretty well-known Superior architect, if you're me and know who Superior architects are. But the total combination of what it cost to build those 2 places, I've heard like between $75,000 and $100,000. And now
Mhm.
this is during the Depression.
Oh.
1930, but they managed to raise the money to build these two new buildings. They kept the old school, which was behind the new school, open until the very last minute.
Okay.
And then the bishop came and he blessed every classroom in the new school and they opened up. But yeah, it was really a state-of-the-art school at the time. Fairly big gymnasium. They had locker rooms for both the boys and the girls. I sort of was taken aback by that. I thought, well, did they even have girls' sports back then?
Right. Did they have Fayette for girls?
I
Did
know.
girls change?
Never had Fayette in
Did
grade
they just
school.
not have changing for Fayette? Just
I
play
don't-
games in your
in your regular
and
clothes,
just go
yeah.
home?
And the nuns' house was very nice too. They had a music room in there, and they had their own chapel,
Nice.
and that's still standing too. And that's apartments.
Again, apartments.
Yeah,
A lot of schools have been turned into apartments.
yeah. And Dewey, their old building, which we've talked about before, was on death's door because they said when they built, I think I had said this in one of our other podcasts, when they built the fire escape onto the building, which they were encouraged to do, that would cut down 50% on like fatalities.
Oh, dear.
But I mean, that was an old pile, but it never caught on fire. And it was open until they opened the new Dewey in 1930.
1930. And that one is still there.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's
It's a
apartments.
beautiful building.
I remember when that was Northland.
Yeah, that's what they
Northland
did
program
after
was
the
there.
school closed. They ran that through there. But they had a clock on the old building, that was on the steeple.
Yes.
And they carried that on to put that into the design of the new building. But I remember as a kid that it never had the correct time.
Really?
There were 4 sides to it. It never had the correct time.
Oh.
The only way you knew what time it was when you're outside playing is St. Francis would play their bells like at noon and 6 o'clock. So you kind of knew, you could figure out where you were in the day.
They were much better timekeepers than the clock.
I know. But Nelson Dewey had the greatest playground.
Did it?
Yeah. So
Awesome. And then there was East, obviously, but East
East went down.
High School, which
yeah.
became East Junior High,
Yeah,
and then was
East Middle School after that. And and that was gone. And that was a true neighborhood school too. I mean, right in the smack middle of the residential district. But yeah. And then they had Lincoln in Central Park, and that's a school that people probably often don't think about. It was sort of really hidden away in the neighborhood.
Where in Central Park is Lincoln?
It was, my sister lived on 8th Avenue East, so
Is it
it was
near the
probably
park itself?
about, oh, no, it's on the other side of 5th Street, more what I would call near the Bay. Yeah, and it was back in there, and they had an original school, and they had an addition to it, but
Is that building still around?
no, that's long gone too.
Okay, but they did have their own little neighborhood school.
Yeah,
That was the time of those.
everybody walked to school.
Were there any other schools in Central Park? Just Lincoln?
I think that was the only one.
Okay. How about, we're going to get like downtown Superior, but not North End, up to Belknap there. I think we'll count Blaine and Central because they're right there.
Yeah, Blaine. Oh my gosh. My favorite photograph of any Superior school is of Blaine. And the original Blaine stood on the site of what is now, I think NBC Bank has taken over the building, but it was the original City County Complex
Okay, yep.
on Hammond there. And that's where Blaine stood. And this was before they had built the Presbyterian Church. So they had this big open field. The best picture ever. Picture of Blaine, and there's a cow in the front yard.
Oh, my word.
I don't think there's a better picture ever taken of any Superior school than that.
Instead of a stray dog, it's a stray cow.
Yeah, and
huh?
I'm thinking, well, why? I don't know why. Did they milk the cow for milk for the kids? I don't know, but there it is.
When did Blaine open?
That opened, do I want to say like 89, 90, something like that.
So that was very old.
That was an old school too, yeah. And they went from kindergarten through 12th grade.
Okay.
And that was fine for a while, but then population grew, so you had to build Central.
Okay.
Yeah, so that sort of morphed out of Blaine.
Right. So the old Blaine building is gone.
Oh, yeah, it was torn down in 63.
Okay.
I think they tried to rehab it, but it was huge. I don't know if the cow came with it or not.
She was probably too old by then.
I know. But not everyone could say they went to school and there was a cow in the front yard.
Okay. So then they built a new Blaine school too, right?
Yes. And that was the modern school in Superior. It had been a long time since they built a school in Superior, and it was built in 1951.
51.
Post World War II, the modern age. And it was Sybil Weed from the Telegram wrote this wonderful story about all the modern conveniences in the school.
Mhm.
The only problem was they shared a heating facility with the old vocational school,
Where was the old vocational
where the
school?
post office is right now.
Oh.
And then eventually both of those schools hooked into Central.
Mhm.
So when Central was torn down and vocational was gone, they had to have a new heating system for Blaine. But I think that was when the school closed down too. It stayed open till about 2003, I think, whenever they tore Central down. Yeah, that's
right.
And then they were sold.
What were some of the modern conveniences that were so wonderful in this new building?
Something I was surprised at, they had a cork floor in the kindergarten room, and it had radiant heating under the floor.
In 1951?
In 1951, yes. But then when I thought about it, Frank Lloyd Wright used to put that in his houses that he built in the 30s and 40s.
Okay.
Because it was available, but that was one of the big things in the school was that. And they had aluminum doors.
Why?
They're easy to open for little kids.
Oh, because they're lighter, I suppose. Yeah, than a steel door would be or something.
Yeah. And that was the first school. Itasca was probably the last new school that was built in Superior. Mm-hmm. And all of those other schools dated from mostly the 20s, if not earlier. St. Francis in 1930, but there were a lot of old schools in Superior, especially when you get into the North End area.
Definitely.
Because there was Howe and Carpenter.
We're getting just a second. We got to finish up downtown. Because there was also, Pattison was in that area, but he's no longer there.
Yeah, but that was a newer school too, I guess.
That was.
Not as new as Blaine. It was built in the 20s.
That was 20s.
Yeah.
And Central, which is gone now.
Yeah.
And the Blaine, very high-tech Blaine from 1951 is still there.
I know, and it still looks high-tech. It really does. What a wonderful way that they remodeled it with all that glass in the front. Mm-hmm. It's perfect.
It's a business center now and has all kinds of offices and businesses in there.
I'm so glad that they did that.
Mm-hmm. But if you go in, you can walk the floors. And as a mom of kids who went to Blaine, that's the same floor there, man. Walking down the same hallway.
Lasts forever.
Right? Definitely.
And when they built it, they used a lot of, which was very popular in the 1950s, those glass blocks.
Yes.
If you look at pictures of the building, you can see, especially in the back, where they had all these glass block windows. Mm-hmm. That's so cool in the 50s.
It still looks cool.
I know, like very cutting edge.
Yes. All right. Now let's get to North End, because there are a lot of school buildings that are still standing, right?
Well, I think St. Louis is about it.
That's it, really? There were so many.
There was Erickson.
How many were there?
Oh my gosh, there was Erickson. Mm-hmm. I think about the other places like Howe and Carpenter, but those were more downtown in smaller schools. But Erickson was just a tremendously big school. But it's gone. It's been gone quite a while, too. I don't know
How old was it?
Oh, that was a pretty old school. I don't know exactly the date when it was built, but it's been around a long time.
Okay.
But St. Louis, I love the history of their parish. They were actually founded by, and this seems so odd and Superior, but maybe not. They were considered a French parish because a lot of the people who settled there came from Ontario or Quebec.
Oh, so it's basically a Canadian parish.
Oh, they would beg to differ.
Okay, a French parish.
French Canadian. Yes,
parish.
And I was surprised. And they had a French priest who spoke French. Of course, you had to do Latin masses. But yeah, those were the beginnings. Those were the seeds of the parish, was that group of immigrants in Superior, like so many other places where, Superior had two parishes for Polish children, St. Stan's and St. Adalbert's, and then there were the Belgians out in Eloise.
Right.
So this is what happened. And it just grew and grew. I mean, North End was a very populated place at one time. Now there aren't as many houses and things down there as there were. So it grew, and they initially started out an evangelical church that had, they had moved on to another place or another church, and they had an empty church building. So the St. Louis parish was established there. Okay. And they had, I think there were a couple different buildings attached to it, and they had a school, but that burned down.
So the one that's there now is not the original?
No, that's not the original school. And I think they held probably classes in the church or the rectory for a while, and then they raised the money which all of these Catholic schools did raise the money amongst themselves. And they built, which was a really, really nice school. It had, I think, it had 4 classrooms. And then they built on an addition in the 1950s. And tragedy struck them again in 1966 because their church burned down.
Oh, no.
And they never rebuilt it. There's talk about it, but then they decided to use a couple of classrooms in the addition for their church.
So it became both a school and a
Yeah.
church.
Mm-hmm. And it's the one school, that has ceased to exist as a school, but still continues educating children.
Because it is the Head Start
Head
building
Start,
now,
yes.
right?
And I
Farm
think
Head
that's
Start.
so nice that it's still doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, but they're an interesting group of people.
How old is that building, that St. Louis?
27, I think it was built, the school.
So that one also has stood there for quite some time.
Yes. They're all fireproof too. And it was amazing. It is surprising how many, how old Franklin is. I hope I'm not jinxing them.
No.
1905, that's an old school in Superior.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all still standing. Well, no, they've lost a lot. As I was telling you earlier, I checked in the 1959 city directory and there were can't remember if it was 13 public school buildings in Superior.
Just elementary schools, right?
Elementary, and then 8 elementary parochial schools.
Wow.
By 1989,
mm-hmm.
there was 1 parochial school left, which was Cathedral. And then the public schools had about halved.
Wow.
By 1989.
It was a time of consolidation.
Yeah. The 60s that's really the time when I think especially the parochial schools in Superior started to close down for a number of reasons. One was because they were not getting people who wanted to be nuns anymore.
Oh.
If you grew up Catholic like I did, Vatican II changed everything in the Catholic Church. It changed. The Mass was no longer said in Latin. It was spoken in your native language. The priest no longer had his back to you. He faced you. It was all these changes. The nuns no longer wore habits. They wore street clothes. And so that was a time of big change in the Catholic Church. And so I think that had something to do with it. And also the population of the city, being a lot smaller than it was in 1910, 42,000 in 1910, and would just decline. Mm-hmm. From then on. So
interesting.
Yeah.
So as we're going about Superior now, I have to note where these school buildings are and how they're being used. It's nice to see that the buildings have found a new life.
Yeah, I'm glad they saved what they did. St. Adalbert's, my parish, the church that we had at St. Adalbert's was originally a Methodist church who apparently had some financial problems and lost it. It was the oldest church building in Superior when St. Adalbert's was still standing. That was the oldest church building in Superior. St. Francis bought it, and they were there until they started building, their magnificent church in East End. And then the Polish community from the Eloise area came and decided to start a church there. So, but that was the oldest church building in Superior, and that was, I think it was torn down in the 80s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, we're not doing anything in Billings Park or South End because there are no school buildings standing there that have been repurposed?
Well, there was a Catholic school out in Billings Park, St. Pat's.
Okay.
There was never a Catholic school in South Superior.
Okay.
It was always, Bryant was out there.
Right. And this is the new
Bryant, but with the old name, yeah. They're still out there, but the Holy Assumption Church never had a school associated with it.
They would just send their kids into...
I don't know where I was thinking about that today. I thought, well, where did you guys go to school? Maybe you went to public school. Oh, no. But they probably went to Cathedral, or they probably went to... I don't remember anyone from South End going to St. Adalbert's, but maybe... St. Francis or something. I don't know. Mm-hmm. It would be a long hike either way.
Anyway, maybe Billings Park, St. Pat's.
I don't know.
That's a question.
They probably went to Bryant.
Well, okay.
Yeah. And then you forget about schools like McCaskill.
Right.
A lot of kids went to McCaskill because it was the teacher school. That's where they did teachers training, was in McCaskill.
Right. But it was also a working elementary school. Until, obviously McCaskill is no more either.
No, the building itself is gone. But also there were the schools that were out in Billings Park that were associated with Cooper. Mm-hmm. And the early days, one of them was for deaf children. And then one was it was called the orthopedic school. And I don't know if that was people who had polio maybe. Mm. But then they all merged into the Cooper Weisberg Center out there. But they had those, and they had, at one time, I did not know this, they had an industrial arts training school in Superior.
Really?
Yeah.
Where was it located?
I think it's that building that's on 21st Street across from the Y.
Oh, it's the cannery now.
Yeah. And
Yes, I've heard it was, that's why he called it the cannery, is because they used to have agricultural programs there and they would grow things and can them. They teach people in the area how to can their produce and things. They'd have classes.
Yeah, so that was at one time listed in the city directory as the Industrial Arts School.
Okay, interesting. Wow. Yeah. So just watch around the corner. You might see
a
school building that's doing something new with itself.
I know. And, I always think the only school that I went to that's still standing is Nelson Dewey. I went to kindergarten there, which had anybody who went to kindergarten at Nelson Dewey went to school in the most fabulous room in Superior. It had a little pond.
A pond?
Yes, and it had like this house at one side, and we would go upstairs and do painting on our easels up there.
Oh, wow.
It had its own entrance for the kindergarten kids and their own bathrooms. It was fabulous. I thought, well, this is wonderful. Schools like this.
Have you ever been back to see if that portion is still part of the apartments that are there?
I think it's a community room now. The kindergarten room is a community room there.
That might be fun to go in and take a look.
Yeah. I was disappointed when Catholic school wasn't quite like that.
Not quite as cool as Nelson
No,
Dewey.
that was a beautiful room. Beautiful room.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your memories. That's awesome.
Welcome.
Thank you for listening to Archive Dive. New episodes are available monthly at superiortelegram.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have a topic you'd like us to explore, email me at mlockwood@superiortelegram.com.